Hello all. In this tutorial, we'll be learning about the data structures of Python, mainly lists and dictionaries. Now, this tutorial is brought to you by MIT World Peace University in collaboration with Analytics Domain. Now let us go ahead with this tutorial. So what are lists? Lists stores an items, a series of items, particularly in a particular order. It allows you to store sets of information in one place, whether you just have few items or thousands of items. How do you define a list? We use square brackets to define a list and use commas to separate individual items. So let's check an example to understand it better. So we'll declare the square brackets first and type in individual items separated by commas. So here they are integer items. So we have printed a list with values 1, 2 and 3. They have integer data types. Now let's go ahead and print a list with different data type. For example, let's print a string. That's it. You have printed a string within a list. So now let's move ahead and understand that you can print a list within a list too, or print different data types in a list too. Let's check that out. So you can go ahead and print a string and then an integer, and it will still function. So a list can store any kind of data type. It can store list within a list because list itself is a data type. Let's check that. So if I print hi as one data type, string, an integer data type, and if I take a list, which would be, it will still function. So we can have a list within a list too. That would function as a data type inside a list, which is the data structure. Now let's declare a variable called num and take variables like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and print it. Now here we will move on to the next topic, which is called the accessing the element in the list. Now individual elements in a list are accessed according to the position called index. The index of the first element is always 0. Negative index means items at the end of the list. So let's access it. So suppose if I print num of 0, the value should be 1. If I print num of a negative index called -1, it should print me the last element of the list, which is 5. If I print a mid-indexed value such as 3, and the output should be 4. So this is how you access the elements of a list in and through the index. Now we can even modify the elements in the list. Once list is defined, the elements can be added or deleted. We do this by the index of the items in the list. So let's take an example. My list equal to, let's take a string in it, and let's modify this list. So let's append one more item into this list. How do we do that? It's very simple. You simply take the list name, you call a inbuilt function called append, and the value which you would like to append. For example, here we'll append D, and it should be done. So now when you print my list, the value should be returned as A, B, C and D. Now you may even modify the list on a particular index. So for example, let's modify our list and insert the value F at the 4th place. So for example, I would write in 4 is the value of the index which I would like to return, and the string value, which is F, and it should now print me with the values A, B, C, D and F. So this is how you modify the list. Now you can even pop the elements on a list. So if we want to remove elements from the list, we can use the pop function. If we think the list of a stack of items, which is by default the pop, which returns the last element from the list, but it can also pop element from any positions of the list. So for example, if I print my list dot pop, and it would pop the last element. So if I print my list it would just return values with A, B, C and D. Now we can even remove any value from a list. So for example, we can type the function which is the name of the list and use the function called remove and whichever item which we want to remove. So in this case we'll remove B and it would do that. And now if we print our list, the values returned would be A, C and D. So it's that simple to modify the list. Now moving on, we can even sort the list. The function sort, the sort method, is used to change the order of the list. Sorted is used to return the sorted list, leaving the original list unchanged. So for example, let's first insert values like, let's have values like 1, 3, 4, 5, some random values, and let's print it. Now we have replaced the data items in the list of the variable name mylist. Now we would go ahead and apply the sort function. So if we apply mylist.sort, it should sort it. So if I print my variable mylist, it must have sorted it in a complete ascending order. We can even reverse it. So here, for example, to reverse it, I would use the parameter called reverse and I would set the boolean value to true. Okay, an error. The list object is not callable. So we have not applied the function called sort, and that's why it gave us an error. Now let's go ahead and print a list and it would return me into a descending order. So it's that simple to play around with list. There are many other functionalities which we'll be covering it later. Now moving on to dictionaries. What are dictionaries? Basically dictionaries are the key value pair. So when you provide a key, it will return the value associated with the key. Now moving on, let's take an example. Let's assign a variable called D, and now the dictionaries are stored in a curly braces. So let's assign a key value pair. So for example, key 1 would have a value of item 1. Key 2 would have a value of item 2. And let's print it. So we have printed our dictionary. So let's print this value, and it has printed where key 1 is the key and value is the item 1. So basically it would return in a key value pair form. Now we can access the values of any key. How do we do that? Simply call the name of the dictionary, that is in this case it's D out here, and whichever key I want. So in this example, let's take key 2 and the output would be item 2. So simply it would return the value associated with the key. So it's that simple to play around with dictionaries too. I hope you all have understood what are lists and dictionaries. We will be covering them later in much more detail. Thank you very much.